Hello and welcome. This is 360 Youth Dialogue only on Third Eye Africa Television. If it's affecting the youth, trust us to dissect it here on 360 Youth Dialogue. I am Juliet Omura. Today we're taking a look at national security. Youth as agent of peace building, bridging the gap of divides, and also strengthening governance. This is really critical, especially at the time Nigeria is facing. It's no news at all that Nigeria is layered with insurgency in the northeast, northwest. We're facing banditry. In the middle belt, we're also facing communal clashes here and there, kidnappings in the southeast, unknown gunmen, and all that. We can see that there's a layer of insecurity going on in Nigeria, not just about terrorism, but it goes beyond that. It talks about conflict. And in this episode, we're dissecting, we're going deep into, conflict management and everything about peace building, how youth can be the major agent of all this. And joining me, I have with me Dr. Michael Nwankpa. He's the director for the Center for Africa Conflict and Development. He's a researcher and an academic scholar. Stay with us. After this short break, we'll be back on more. Welcome back from that short break. If you're just joining in, you're right on time. We're talking about Nigeria's security and youth as major agent of peace building, bridging divides, and also strengthening governance. How can youth play in this key, or rather core pillars of peace and security? And thank you, Dr. Michael. I mean, you're a researcher, you've done all your whole research and academic work. Welcome to 360 Youth Dialogue.
Thank you, Judah. It's a pleasure to be here.
Very welcome. Okay, let's go before we dive into peace building, let's cause some conflict here. But what really is major of conflict from your research so far, conflict management, conflict development and all that? What would you say is like the major cause of conflict in Africa? We're looking at Africa and pinpoint down to Nigeria.
Okay. So very sadly, Africa has always been seen as a place where full of poverty, a place of where there's immense poverty, and a place that is bedeviled with conflict. Since independence, Africa has suffered all kinds of diverse conflicts. So from civil wars. Here in Nigeria, civil war in 67, just 7 years after independence. We've had civil wars in Sierra Leone, we've had civil wars in Liberia, we've had currently coming down to our contemporary times. You have in Sudan, you have the civil war going on. You go to DRC Congo, where unfortunately is a place that is so blessed and enriched with both natural and human resources, but where one that is war-torn, where you see a clash of foreign interests. You have so many foreign interests in there, as well as regional and all kind of domestic interests, which is fueled by what they call natural resource conflicts. You go across to the Francophone countries, where we're already now seeing some kind of rupture in the kind of polity in those countries, where the people are rising up against during long-standing French domination of the economy and the politics of those places. And again, we see insurgencies, we see jihad, insurgencies across the Sahel, we see JNIM, we see Islamic State in the Greater Sahara operating in those are the two major ones operating in the Greater Sahara. You come down to Lake Chad Basin, you see Boko Haram, you see it's a faction, ISWAP, operating along that corridor. Then you come down also to Nigeria, you see to the northwest, you see banditry, and you see that also extending to other kind of like coastal state, Benin, and see all of that stuff. In South Africa, we see rising criminality and all of that stuff. But I think you've asked the source of the conflict, or if you've just asked to talk about the general conflicts, then you see elections as well. Paradoxically, elections are happening in these places. And last year we had over like nearly 20 elections going on. But those elections have not yielded no benefits. Rather, they've entrenched into authoritarianism. So we saw in Uganda where the current president Museveni has been in power for 40 years. He's extending his power. We saw in Cameroon, we saw the oldest of nearly 100 years old winning power. And when you see lack of social mobility, I put that against the teeming youth population. Africa has the youngest population, and see the frustration with lack of social mobility and not seeing that it's creating a clash. So what we're seeing now, we saw with the finance bill in Kenya, where the youth are rising up against that. So we're seeing a lot of pressure across board. So it all boils down to governance, bad governance, lack of governance, and then people are really, really rising against that. So it's a complex mix.
Exactly. Like all the things you've said, it's like a whole network of problems and conflict, causes of conflict. You went from, governance down to democracy, down to, like, it's a whole lot. There's a whole lot of issues surrounding conflict in Africa. But when we talk of conflict, the next question that would come to our mind is, okay, what's the solution to this conflict? And that brings me to the question, is peace building a rhetoric slogan in Africa? Can it be achieved in Nigeria especially?
Well, you need to understand what peace is for in the first instance. People talk about negative peace, and the negative peace is like when you say there's an absence of peace, the absence of war, but that's not necessarily, that's why they call it negative. It's not necessarily, doesn't mean there's peace, it just means there's no war, but there are other kind of like things going on. But the real peace is where there is prosperity, there is people are living a good standard of living, as good standard of living. People can have access to good health, people can have access to good education, people can have social mobility. That there is development, and then you say that there is peace. So we talk about relative peace. So we've had some relative peace in some places, and in some other places we've been, like I mentioned, Sudan in the place where people can do nothing. So those kind of places, you say they're comfortable. Placing like Cameroon, even though there's no war, but people don't. There's no human rights. People are repressed. In Rwanda, for instance, there's no war, but people don't have political rights, people that are civil rights. The civil rights have been trampled on. So would you say you can say, oh, there's no war going on. You live in this place, there's insecurity. People can go to their villages. So, but you can say, but there's no war, but there's no peace. So peace building is people use that as the rhetoric. People use that as unfortunately there are some agencies that use that to it's just a slogan. Unfortunately to some extent, but there are also people that are like genuinely invested in building peace at different layers, at different levels, whether the NGOs, whether international NGOs. There are also people that are doing at the community that we don't know of, that are maybe interfaith, maybe local imam, local chef, or even youth that are creating opportunities for people to live peacefully among themselves. So yes, it's real. Peace building is real, but it has to be directed from above, and I don't think we've paid too much attention to it. But there's just the conceptual problem where in looking at peace building, people can look at the nexus between development and security and say, what is peace building? Is it sending soldiers to go and what is peace building providing economic relief to people that don't have access? So peace building can be in soft form, it can be in hard form, it can be, is this sending UN missions to go and make sure, is that what peace building is? So we can debate this all day long, but what really matters, we need to be clear about negative peace and the kind of real peace that I want to talk about.
So what you're saying right now is that peace cannot be total. There's no absolute peace building when it comes to achieving peace in a nation.
No, it's just that we first need to conceptualize what peace is when we talk about what peace is.
Based on the region?
Peace can be for you. You might not have enough financial stuff that you said, but you might be able to go out and work and go out and come, and you have freedom of movement. That could be peace to you. Okay. Some people have money and then you live under a tyrannical government and you can do nothing, but you have the money. Is that peace? So it depends on what, but we have an understanding of what peace is. It has to be related not necessarily to the absence of war, There has to be it's a minimum basic standard of where people can enjoy some level of human rights without fear of want or fear, of other kind of political, however you want to put it. So yeah,
I like the fact that you made peace as equated to development and security. So peace is not just the absence of war.
Yeah.
So if there is absence of war and there's no freedom of movement, or there is no development of the people, then there's no peace.
Yeah, then there's going to be a cycle, and that incentivizes scrupulous elements or frustrated elements or discontentment. That then it creates another, maybe down the line, people creates, because when you see insurgencies or armed groups, they don't just spring up. It's from the frustration. They when they have no platform to engage with those in leadership, then they take up. They go down that route to go in an armed movement. And
interesting. So development can actually bring about.
Can stall. Can be a solution.
Oh, interesting. To peace building.
To peace building.
Interesting. Let's do a mathematics here. Peace equals development plus security.
Yeah.
Call me mathematician. Okay, in practical, let's talk about what does youth-led peace building look like? You made mention of, are we talking about UN peacekeeping mission? Are we talking about giving, the youth the weapons to go to the war front and, anchor that whole security and all that? So when we talk about peace building among the youth-led peace building, what are we looking at?
Well, so you look at it in Africa, for instance, we have the youngest youth population, which is a massive potential. It's a wealth, but it also can be a weapon that people can weaponize. So when we talk about election violence, for instance, who are the people that the unscrupulous elements we use? The youth, people, because they got the strength, they still got the youth in them. So the youth can be used as a negative force for such activities. But then again, the youth can be deployed for something good. So the youth have ideas. We have youths that are, we live in a digital era, where the youths have a dominance in terms of knowledge, in terms of control of this space. And the space is a big one that can be used to advance our society. So we don't live in this anachronistic era. So the youth can play a role in bringing innovation, novel approaches. We've been fighting insecurity the same way. We're not moving forward. So the youth can bring novel ways, because the people who fight in insecurity, they're also very creative, and so you need people with ideas to match and be 2 steps ahead. So the youth can also, because again, like someone said, we transit, and the youth are also the ones to take over power. So we need to have youth as leaders, building up leadership skills, getting those leadership skills that we can develop. So the youth can play a very, very big role in using their number. We have the number. It's about maybe 60-70% of the African population are youth. So the number is strength. And when you come, if you have the biggest stakeholder in a company, their voices should be heard. They are actually the boss. So we have, because supposedly, so they should be the one calling the shot. Their interests they should be on the stage talking, because you're legislating, you're talking about things that affect them. So you can't legislate and talk about things that affect someone without involving them in that conversation and saying what they need. Because what we've seen so far, even when people come, development agencies come, they say, we want to build a borehole here. No, you've not asked that person or those people in that community what they actually need. Borehole might be important, but something else might be of paramount importance at that moment in time. So the youth need to be there, leading the peace, saying what they want, and not just putting them let's just have one youth. They should be at the forefront of, be integral to whatever committee, whatever agency, or whatever that is leading that, because then they understand the terrain. It's times, it's just like you come, let's say what you did, I don't know how old you are, what you've done in primary school. You come now, talk to my son now, and then they say, daddy, that's your time is gone. So they understand the times. So they can understand and navigate all of that nuances and new terrains and help to move peace forward. So yes, they're very, very critical to that infrastructure, that security and peace infrastructure.
So putting the youth in forefront is about empowering them when it comes to skill acquisition, when it comes to skill development, when it comes to involving their voices in the community, when it comes to them being involved in legislative decision, policy making, and all that. That's how we can put youth in the forefront when it comes to peace building.
Well, when we talk about empowerment, sometimes again, there's people always think, like from what with the conference we had, people think it's a question of, oh, the youth want to be the president. No, it's not a question of that. There are different phases. And empowering is just the government is to provide an enabling environment. So we did that recently. Before the Constitution of Nigeria, you have to be a certain age before you can be the president. So that was lowered. So that's how there are structural things that can be done to create the enabling environment. One of the structural things that can be done is to demonetize our politics. Because as a woman, as a youth, where are you going to get 100 million, however millions that used to get a ticket, whatever, to be a candidate? This is prohibitive and it's beyond your reach. So first and foremost, these are the kind of structural things that can be changed. But in terms of what the youth needs to do, nobody's going to give you nothing. So the youth needs to be motivated. It's also, what can be done is creating an educational system where we are creating, raising people of critical minds that can take over. So these are things that can be tweaked at the structural level. But again, the youth have to be self-motivated. But I think when we change those culture, those things, then it creates a culture, a general culture, where people then can impact or effect change. But there's a culture, you might not know it. So, and it starts from education, it starts from the family, it starts from the community, it starts from the school, it starts from the church, and then there's that mass, people behave the same. You wonder why everyone behaves the same. Why the youth are nonchalant about politics? It's a culture that's been, it's the little words that have been said, oh, it don't matter, they won't do nothing, the election will do this. So that becomes a general. It's like, where did that come from? You're being educated, you're being institutionalized to believe that. So that's why we need to change the education and start change the narrative. Also change the curriculum in the schools. Some of these curriculums are moribund. They are not curriculum that are fit for purpose. So these are the things that they can do for the youth. And then you see a massive change, in the way. I've got interns that are 21, young females that are young graduates. They're very, very sound. I'm telling you, they can lead. They can lead at whatever level.
You said nobody's going to give the youth nothing for nothing, yeah? And you've made mention of make the change. There have to be the change in our institution, education level. Who's going to make that change?
Yeah, again, that's one of the things the youth need to have. When I say that nobody's going to give you, the youth have the number. And again, while protest is a legitimate element in a democracy, I for one don't believe protest is very effective. You write a placard. I believe in an intellectual framework.
Okay.
So if the youth that are intellectuals come back together, we've got the number. And then we say, you know what, this is what we want in this curriculum. We want that to change. I tell you that it will happen. But once you don't know this thing, so that means you need people, and that's what the center is doing. That's what we're doing, creating that platform where people can then come together and then make and use an efficient approach to make them do it. Because the independence wasn't got from, oh, we want to free you. No, nobody wants to free you. If I'm having come and I pluck something from a yard, I don't need to do nothing. Why will I change if it's not broken? So unless you have that knowledge, the people that negotiated independence or fought for it went and saw, hold on a minute, this is the Second World War. These people are people leading us, they are losing badly. Oh, they're humans as themselves. They have that knowledge and they say, okay, we need to have our independence. So the youth need to wake up, band together, and in an intellectual way, demand this kind of changes that I've mentioned.
Very clear. I think this paints a clear picture, if I'm getting the picture you're painting here. When it comes to youth-led peace building, it's not about protest.
No,
it's not about carrying placards and ranting here and there, give us the seats in the presidential or anything about that. It's about intellect. You said something, efficient approach. So there have to be an efficient approach from the youth where we dialogue, where we come together and throw ideas together, probably with a body or something. It could be anyhow, but other than protest, it's very clear right now in Nigeria that protest is not effective. I mean, we just make our noise behind it, just do the whatever dialogue behind, and that's it. We don't see the aftermath of the protest, the effect of the aftermath of the protest, and that's really a good picture when it comes to youth-led peace building. It goes beyond protest.
Absolutely.
It goes beyond youth taking the weapon to the enemy forefront or all that. It's about efficient approach of intellectual thinkers, efficient approach of, youth coming together to be innovative. That word innovation really goes a long way. Let's go back to how youth can be included in peacemaking and sustenance. Peacemaking is different and sustaining it is another thing. So how can we now be involved when it comes to peacemaking and sustenance?
Well, I'll go back to that when I talk about a culture, and I don't know what you understand by a culture. A culture is a way of thinking, a way of doing things, and that has to be embedded inside of it. That has to be something that you learn, something that you're indoctrinated with.
Okay.
So the youth we need to first create a culture. Like you could build a nice building, and maybe in the next 5-10 years, the building is now looking derelict. The building, because we've not built a culture of maintenance, a culture of which we call sustenance. So to sustain, for you to sustain it you need to have a culture. You need to have a mindset of what it is. So it's all about mindset. So nothing happens. People don't know. Nothing happens with a poor mindset. So it starts from the mindset, change the mindset, and see the possibility. Because again, we've been the people that we've been bastardized. We've normalized abnormality. So that even if you do something normal, you're seen as weird. So by the time we need some sort of reorientation, and then when we reorientate, and that's why you need mentorship. You could have some mentorship and a lot of people have come, a lot of youth are under my wing, under Common as where you provide such leadership, and we need people of integrity. Some youths can provide that. Some people that have gone through that. We need to set up youth centers where people can be trained and imbibed with those values and all of that kind of stuff. So it's not a question of we need a seat in the place, because if you come into a system that is faulty, it's just like a foundation. A foundation holds a house. So the foundation is shaky. There's no fine structure put on it. It doesn't matter. It's going to crumble. So we need to start from that scratch and create the youth that can make the peace. And then, but the youth can show as well that, especially the young youth, the Gen Zs, that we're far away from all these fault lines, ethnic fault lines, where people, maybe the older elites play people along, you're from this tribe, you're from that tribe. I think the youth will have that kind of like detribalized, so they can create peace by bringing that on board. But unfortunately as well, I've seen this kind of youth where have been, again, when poverty has been weaponized, because when youth don't have access to this, then they can be weaponized to dance or toe whatever thing their elites are going to use them to say, toe this line, and then they become indirectly or directly agents of destruction rather than agents of change. Because again, they see the youth that are doing this, they're not better off. I've seen people that have immersed themselves in those kind of debates, and then you look at them, your life is not any better. You're going on these roads that are this, but why are you supporting all of this kind of divisiveness? So it's reorientation, and then nothing happens without changing the mindset. I see what's going on in Abia State, in some of the states, and when people see, whoa, so this is possible. So people just need to see, they need hope. So we need people, influencers, youth influencers, not the kind of celebrities they have, and it's a TikTok. I mean, real youth influencers that are doing. So we need to enhance their work. We need to spotlight them. So we need to create that culture where we see them as more celebrities, not the Big Brother kind of thing, not the TikTok, not the fast money kind of celebrities. We need those ones that can
like
motivate
real
people.
Impact, society.
Yeah,
impact,
that may impact it.
influencers.
Yeah, so we need to put them in the spotlight. We need to, so that they can be of more influence to mass of youth.
Okay, just before we come to, you made mention of diversification, tribalism here and there, and the division. Just before we come to that place, you said so much on mindset. You know, the youth, when they say youth, there's a lot of people that have that stereotype that, oh, these are catalysts for the destructions. These are the ones that, you know, are the major destructions. They are the core people. So what discourage or truncates peace building among you? Do you think youth have already inculcated that mindset of, by the way, I'm just a young person, or I mean, my opinion don't matter, so they just do whatever they please. And you said something about value. Do you think this has affected the youth when it comes to peace building and their mindset?
Yeah, the value is very, very important. And the value is this, that we grew up in a home where, even though we grew up, it wasn't like it's an environment that was, you know, rich, or environment that was posh, an environment that was shielded from all of these kind of societal issues. But we came from a family that was grounded in values. So, and families are the base of everything. So I was fortunate to come from that kind of family where there was values. But we also have institutions, maybe like the church. Maybe we go to mosques that are invited. I remember going to primary school. I went to a local primary school, which, by the way, we don't have public schools again.
I mean,
I'm talking at the primary schools. I went to public primary school, and we have solids, but that's the foundation. But everybody sends their kids to private school, but there's no public schools. So when we have those public schools, I remember the songs we sing, and there's a particular song in Yoruba that says that you learn, if you're learning education or whatever, without the farming. So they're trying to say, oh, once you learn education, learn a skill. You know, the agriculture, you need it, you'll be hungry. So they're doing that, they encourage that. So we have all those institutions. Those songs, you think they're just songs, but they're songs that are putting those values that say choose integrity over all of that. Then you come to the church, that they provide all of that. You come to the schools, you come. But now you come to a place where there are those institutions. Everybody's just fast. You go to government agencies now, and you come in, there's all about money. Everybody wants money before you could do anything. So the youth see all of that. To do the right thing is difficult. So again, I come back to that culture and mindset. But that culture and mindset, I know in the 80s, the first Buhari tenure, he came up with this, although it's a military war against a discipline. But that's not the way to do it. You can't force people. You need to lead by example. You need to create the environment. You need to, you tell a child, let's say you have a child, tell a child, don't steal. And the child sees you stealing. What you said don't matter, is what he sees. So it's what the child sees. So we need to have mentors, we need to have people, role models, that people are then going to model themselves on. So that's what I think needs to change. And that's what we're kind of like trying to create. And say there's an alternative to this. And the youth can say, I'll give you an example, last example. In the conference, a youth has said something about something, he was quickly shut down. But when I met him after the event, I say, sir, can I have your card? I'm like, I don't have card. Can I exchange handles? He said, that's what I'm talking about. He was so happy that, oh, you're clued up to exchange handles. So you see, that's what I'm talking about. The youth can be innovative. You go to conference, nobody exchange cards. So people just exchange QR, right? Take the code, and then I get your details and all of that. So the youth can bring in all of this stuff. You come to government agencies, the people are still using their files, and you're wasting time. If I need to register a company right now, where I'm based, I don't need all of this bureaucracy. I go online, pay 12, not even a lot of money, because I'm setting up business. 12, maybe in our currency, maybe I'm paying 20,000. Within less than an hour, my company is registered, ready to do business. So it's all these bottlenecks we need to take away from that, and the youth can lead. That's why the youth need to form together and say, we need this change. We need this change. Sometimes it's not the big things we're looking at, it's all these small little, change that we want, and that's going to then create that ripple effect and that big effect that we want.
Interesting. So when it comes to mindset, it's not the youth that is championing that mindset. It's the role models. You said mentors and role models a lot of times. And looking at that, we're looking at from top to bottom. We're looking at from leaders to the youth, to even the young ones coming up, because you made mention of your primary school, where that song, rather, that what would I call it? It's a song, but it's an ideology that is being passed down to the little ones. So they sing it as songs, but deep down it goes beyond that. It starts creating an ideology. So when we start seeing a shift in ideology in schools, primary schools, institutions, marketplaces, we're looking at religious institutions, we're looking at government institutions, we start seeing that change of mindset. Then the youth would move further or be encouraged, if I use that word, be encouraged to have core value and identity of peace builders rather than catalysts for destructions. That's really interesting. Now let's go to our diversity. Nigeria diversity. In fact, any country with diversity is like beautiful. But in Nigeria, it's like it's a strength and a vulnerability for Nigeria. And looking at the youth, you said something that intrigued me, that Nigerian youth right now are not tribalistic, but there is a way that tribalism and divide have actually caused conflict in Nigeria.
Yes, so people from our legacies, I mentioned the colonial legacies. These are colonial legacies where the pit one tribe against another tribe, and which the post-colonial elites, which is the leaders, African leaders, have then perfected. They've become masters, even far more adept at it than the colonial people. So they use those fault lines. The elite will use those fault lines. So let's say there's a particular tribe, maybe the Yoruba is, they feel like they are sidelined from power, and then they create this illusion that, oh, this is, and then they'll be able to whip up that sentiment and say, oh, nothing is coming to us. Meanwhile, it doesn't matter who is in power. The majority of the tribe from that person in power is not going to get nothing. It's still the elite. It doesn't matter what elite. So those fault lines unfortunately exist, and we saw it in the last 10 years. It's deteriorated, unfortunately, where you see where there's a very sharp division, where people even on, let's say for instance, I go on a Sahara Reporters news or whatever it is they put up, and then you go to the comments, it's always, oh, you're from this tribe, you're from this tribe, you're from this tribe, you're from... So you said they're talking about that, they're not talking about what matters. So what I'm seeing is, again, is the frustration of the youth not having economic opportunities, and then someone can come to you don't have economic, someone can say to you, I'll give you a little whatever, and then people, because I've seen youths that perhaps we're supporting one candidate, and then the next minute I'm seeing them against the candidate talking. I'm like, okay, what is the shift? They people become tribalistic. So it's just, we don't have a tribe. Someone said in the conference, we don't have a tribal issue. Nobody cares whether you're from this tribe or that tribe. Anyway, even if you come abroad, we've seen it in Trump's America, we are seeing it in the UK, we've seen it across Europe. Oh, these migrants. When people feel, but the migrants are contributing to the economy. The migrants do a lot of stuff. Without the migrants in the United Kingdom, for instance, the whole health system will shut down. But because the elite can manipulate those narratives, so it's not just here. I'm just trying to say, let's be fair.
Yeah, it's not just about
everywhere.
Nigeria.
Everywhere people manipulate, the elites manipulate those divisions for their political aim. But it's about educating the youth. It's about educating and creating, presenting a right narrative, presenting facts. And we are not research-based. All our policies are not based on evidence. So by the time we create an alternative approach and say, look at the facts speaks for themselves. You might say, oh, this tribe, because I've written an article where I debunk the myth that the Fulani herders that want to take over, want to Islamize everywhere. That's a big lie. That's a big lie in my opinion. Are there elements that are trying to? Yes, but it's the Fulani herder most Fulani militias are even themselves victims. But we have that narrative, and then we just band it, and then you tackle those people. So until you provide the evidence and the facts, and then people can see clearly what it is. But that goes back again to the educational system. People to have critical mind themselves, because if no one can come to me, let's say myself, and say, oh, I'm going to give you 100 million to do this, I won't do it, because I have critical mind. And you can't tell me this is white, this is blue. No, I won't do it. So it's from the critical education that I've imbibed. So that's why I said that change has to come from that, changing our educational system and creating a mass of critical youth.
So if it's not about tribalism, it's about critical thinking.
No, what I'm saying is if the majority are uncritical thinkers, then you're easy to be manipulated. They say a community or a state or a nation of uneducated or semi-educated or miseducated people, it's danger. It's dangerous. It's like an amateur holding a gun. He's just going to keep killing. So the change is changing. People don't really put an eye on the system. We look at the politics, but I would say the institutions that I hold mainly responsible for the educational institution. When we change that institution, you will see how change will come, because we're creating, and I think I'm not even talking university. From the primary, like abroad where I come, university is not compulsory. Primary need to be solid, and you create people that can have the mind of their own to make up their mind. Then they won't be swayed by all of these divisions or tribalism.
Yeah, that's right. But if you should look at Nigeria, excuse me, if you should look at Nigeria, what do you think is like our biggest divide in this country?
No, to be honest, this just the leaders. The leaders, there's nothing. It's just the leaders that create this. I'm not saying there are no schisms in people have, but all of that comes into play when people talk about resources. So when people feel, so again, our biggest issue is also in the constitution. Why do we have indigenous settler? If you say, when you go out, you don't carry no Yoruba passport, you don't carry no Igbo passport, there's nothing on your passport that says Igbo, Yoruba. So we should stop. When you're applying for a form, they say, well, indigenous, well, local government, we should stop all of that. Until we stop all of that, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be, this problem is going to continue. You come into a place and they say, indigenous, there's a quota for this. Those are colonial mentality. That's what that's what we've continued. So we need to change all of that. So until we're ready to change that and change and to have a people constitution, that's where the youth can come in. Because the constitution we have is not a constitution, it's not our constitution. It's not we the people. There's no we the people in that constitution. So the youth can say, we don't want that. We want to sit down and have a dialogue, and let's come and say, this is what we want. You start in a company and you come to me, you want me, you and I to set a company. You and I will sit down and I'll say, okay, I'll have go 20% stake, 50% stake. This is what I want. And you write a constitution. That's how I do it. We set up, I've got businesses. We write a constitution. That was going to guide us. The youth didn't do that. The Nigerian people didn't do that. So that change, we need to do that. Not the reforms, not the National Assembly, the session 30, session 2, session reforms. No, like scrap everything, sit down, and then we write how we want to be governed, and say, okay, if this your nationalities, semi-nationality is more important. Oh, do you want to have a Yoruba passport? Do you want to have an Igbo passport? Nobody should be forced into some kind of marriage you don't want to be. It's just like a marriage. If I tell you that I want to marry you, I don't want to marry me, and I tell you I need to force something on you, no, you don't force something on no one. You need to sit down and form a constitution that is going to guide you in a way to remove all those tensions. But that's going to the foundation. If it's faulty, there's going to be a problem. You just keep patching. Nothing will happen. That foundation is faulty.
Interesting.
It's really faulty.
Interesting. But let's look at communal clashes. We're hearing of communal clashes here. And if it's not about tribe or community or my own people, your own people, I don't know why we would continue hearing communal clashes in this community. And look at where, if I must say, we're in the Gen Z generation, and this is a civilized country, if I may put it, because when you go to all this community, they have access to information, they have access to primary healthcare, primary education institutions there, but we still hear things of communal clashes here and there. So is it fueled by sentiment, misinformation, or is just, lack of resources?
Like what we talk about, like I said, in every, even in advance, whatever that kind of categorization. So let's just use it for lack of word. The people still use sense. You go to certain parts and people will still look at you. You move into a certain neighborhood, they will look at you like whether you fit in here or not. But by and large, those places, I've not heard where, let's say you come from a place, let's say in the UK for instance, you could live anywhere in the UK. Nobody's going to say you're not from here. As long as you live in that place, that's your local government. Your local government is not. Imagine someone has said to you, I'm conceived and raised in Lagos, and when someone says, go and get your local government, state of origin, what's that got to do with anything? That's got nothing to do with anything. So once you remove those first, you won't have those communal stuff. So in Jos, for instance, which is, by the way, a beautiful place, where you've had this perennial communal clash. You say, Someone was met a friend yesterday who was telling us about those communities where he said the Hausa community came there, set up a trade outpost. Different communities come and trade there and do stuff. So that people are interested. People don't care about. People just care about resources. But these things really come when there's scarcity of resources. It's just human nature. When there's scarcity of resources, people go into their primordial stuff and start looking at, oh, you're not from here, you're not from here. So that's why I say I tie into development as well. So when there's scarcity of resources, people always then start going into different identities and start saying, that's when they remember, oh, you're not this, you're not that, you're not that, you're not that. But when you create a universal stuff, Nigeria, first thing that we need to do, we need, in Rwanda, for instance, they don't talk about whether you're Hutu or Tutsi. Nothing. After the genocide, they took care. So everybody's a Rwandese, you know. So when we do that, then that mindset first, we stop that at the conceptual level. Then I'm not saying that there won't be like, when things go by, people won't, but it won't be like what we're seeing now. People understand that if a flock of houses or whatever come into a place in Lagos, people will look at them somehow, go to the southeast. If certain people, because we live in mutual suspicion of, but we are Nigerians. You should live anywhere you want to live in. So until we change that, then there will be less of all of that.
Word that struck with me, mutual suspicion. And before we continue on mutual suspicion and why that actually thrives, I want us to take a short break. After that, we'll be right back with more. Welcome back from that short break. And if you're just joining in, you quite missed a lot, but we're still having this conversation here, and it's been intriguing because I've seen that when it comes to conflict, it's not all that there is. There is more to it. It's more of development. It's more of innovation. It's more of just, signing agreements, signing dialogue and all that, whether be it kinetic or non-kinetic approach. Peace building goes beyond that, and involving the youth is something that we have to do to bring about peace in any nation. And so far, I've been having this conversation with Dr. Michael here on 360 Youth Dialogue. And back to you, Dr. Michael. So you said, before we went on the break, you said something about mutual suspicion. So why do you think this whole mutual suspicion thrives? And you made mention of weaponizing poverty, weaponizing that divide. I feel like it's more like we're one. There, you made mention of there is nothing like Igbo passport, Igbo Nigerian passport, Yoruba Nigerian passport. So it's Nigeria, you're in Nigeria or you're not in Nigeria. So it's more of that. But we've seen that from the colonial era and down to right now, they've weaponized that religious divide, ethnicity divide, and down right now to where people are now coming together as one, because you said that this generation, they don't really care about that whole tribal stuff. But because we've come to that point where poverty has been weaponized, lack of education and ignorance and all that have been weaponized, and that's why we're seeing even this current youth are now acting all tribalistic. So what can safeguard the youth to not, or to be immune to all these tools that are being weaponized to cause divides among Nigerians?
Well, it's a tough one, but we need to create. There has to be an alternative system, and when we look, the youths have driven, like I said to you, even in the independence that we've got, that at every point in a social conflict or transformation, you have a point of conflict, a point of tension, and then when there'll be a melting point where people then can. So we've had different melting points. We had them during the NSAS protest, where the youth led protests against that stuff. Then I think there was also at some end bad governance.
Yes.
And then if I also go beyond Nigeria, go to Kenya, we saw in Kenya where the youth are fighting against the finance bill that Ruto, the president, wanted to influence the IMF, World Bank kind of austerity measures. In Madagascar, it's like lack of water, lack of this. The youth are taking that. Now, but what happens is the way the solution is the youth need to have, alongside of that, an intellectual, I keep saying that maybe I need to define what that means. So what it means is you need to have a platform. You were saying something, a structure. So structure that can commit. That structure, some people could set up in Zimbabwe, they set up like a youth political party.
Okay.
So that's, I'm just giving an example of the community. It could also be a youth lobby group. Like anywhere you go in all throughout the world, people have lobby group. When they want to election, they say, our group, this is what our group wants. It could be, and when that group is powerful, like you say, let me break it down to what you might understand. An influencer has 50 million people. The brands are chasing him because they know he can influence the whole lot of stuff.
Million.
So if the you can have, and then that's what the politicians are also exploring. They get all this. We've been seeing some things. I've been in some city movement. They say, oh, this guy has this followership. So if I form the city boy movement, then he can say, oh, go and vote so and so. And then if their followers are very like diehard, and they can think themselves, they just do that. So it's the same way. You create a platform, it creates a structure, but it's more intellectual structure that can either become a lobby group, a policy that can say, this is the policy, this is what we want. We want, let's say for instance, one electronic transmission of whatever. Say, okay, don't worry. We got a research center for African Computer Development. They've done a research, they've taken surveys, they've looked at the technical side of things, they've spoken, they have a technical expert. The technical expert comes and say, oh, this can be done. We could, all the technical can be fixed, and then we present the policy brief, the policy whatever, and you can't argue against it because it's scientifically presented document. So it's rather than placard, we want food. It's like, no, sir, you say you're not going to do this, this is it. What can you argue against it? Bring your experts. It's just like whatever you do as a researcher, you have credibility, validity, because it needs to be tested. Another scholar, another scientist need to be able to use your same process and come to that same result. So that's what I mean by the youth need to have an intellectual process. That's setting up a lobby group. But again, the youth groups we have here have also been infiltrated. They've been bought. So someone comes and the youth leader goes. It could be National Association of Nigerian Students, whatever it is. And then I saw they showed down between them and some people in Benin. And they could call the leaders, 1, 2 leaders, give them some couple of millions, and it's gone. So that's what I'm saying. We need critical minds in that group. That's why I keep saying you have to go to the educational system that needs to be changed. And then it's difficult for people to be bought. Because a hungry man can't be bought.
Yes.
An ignorant man doesn't know any better. So all of this has to be done in one place. So this are going to be the solution. There's no easy fix. There's no, when you have a child, he has to go to primary, secondary school. So that education, that thing needs to be changed. And it needs to come from ground up structural change, foundational change, impact. That's the only way we can have an enduring change and solution that we want.
Interesting. So for the youth to be immune to being weaponized for destruction or for divides or for conflict, they have to have that intellectual structure, that intellectual platform where they are grounded when it comes to education and when it comes to integrity. Because it's very funny when I look at certificates and they say, oh, this person has been tested in character and in education anyways, but it goes beyond just immuning yourself with providing the resources. When the resources are available and the integrity is lacking, they would still fall victim for that same weaponization. So let's go to how youth can leverage on their leadership skill. Now I'm talking more on the leadership angle, where we can channel our leadership skills towards tackling insecurity, towards tackling security issues, and promote dialogue, not just protest. How can we promote dialogue and strengthen institution and demand for our right, demand for peace and conflict resolution? How can youth deploy that skill? We've been talking about getting the intellect. How can now we deploy that intellect?
Well, there's so many ways you can do it. From like a fora, there can be forums that youths on social media, and there's this myth that people think, oh, people are just social media talking. Social media is powerful. Social media was used to do the Arab Spring, when there was the revolution with the Arab Spring. Social media can be used, not just talk. And when people have dialogue, people think it's just talk. Oh, you're just talking after talking. So youth can have dialogue, they can always dialogue, and then shared minds. When shared minds, from great minds. Africa was divided from a conference, Berlin conference. It was conference, sitting down and talking. That's why they sat down because they were all fighting for portions. Okay, let's sit down. We are all criminals. We all want the same thing. Let's just, okay, you take this. You take this man's village. You take this. It's from the conference. So it's the same way. The youth need to have forums. They need to have where they can talk. Even if you go on the YouTube and say, okay, what do we want? And it's okay, okay, live. Okay, I know this or that. What is our common ground? We want good roads. Are you against good roads? Live for this, but keep back your Igbo this. Leave all of that aside. We understand all of that. Do you want good roads? Yeah. Do you want good health? Yeah. Do you want this? Yeah. And then it's okay. We agree on this. We can disagree on all this, but we agree on this. Okay, what do we do? This is what we want. This is what we've been elsewhere. Elsewhere where we go to, everyone has. I don't know police number. Where I stay, even as an individual, if I'm military, I could call 9911, 911, and they come immediately within 5 minutes. I could be, somebody's sick, my wife is here, and I call ambulance. So who doesn't want that? Do you have to be Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, Kanuri to want that? So you want that? Yeah? Okay. With the youth, we are, how many are we? 200 million. We are out of you, we are like 100 and something million. This is what we want. Nobody's going to deny that.
But how do you think we can collate that?
People can say how.
Exactly, how?
How do you get your phone? How do you do all these things? How do you go on the TikTok? People can use different fora and sit down and do that. It's possible. But then again, if you're asking questions, I used to say it's not about numbers. It's about, do you have youth influencers, the youth that are doing stuff, and those youths can influence. Let's say, for instance, you have an influence, and there are people that you are sure they're like, 100 people in your community that listen to that. When Juliet says yes, they follow you.
Okay.
So if you have those kind of leaders, influencers, and those are people that have been in the conference, not everybody that's going to be there.
Exactly.
So that's what I'm saying. You get those youth leaders, you identify those youth leaders doing stuff, and then they're in the conference. And then if we agree on that, they have that, and then they can influence their community of sphere of influence. And then that's where the numbers come in. It's not, so when you do survey, quantitative survey, and then they say, do you think they interview everyone there? They just randomly can say 1,000 survey covers the whole whatever. So it's randomization, and one person's view can represent the view of 200 or 2,000. So you don't need to necessarily, so that's the kind of approach. So you're getting key leaders that have same mindset, come together, agree on, things that you can, and then form a policy, and then they can then distill that to their communities, and then that chain then goes like that. That's the way it is.
Interesting. So the core mechanism that can be used for peace building, influencer, key peace builders, and social media, very important. So let's, before we call this a close, what should be our priority? What should be our priority in the major conflict era like this? Yeah,
to be honest, if I focus on Nigeria, the major conflict is in the last, so we've had this democracy nearly 30 years. We used to call it nascent democracy, but I would say we've had nearly equal number of civilian rule and military rule as well. We're just about 60 years, 60 whatever years. So the elections are very important. The youth need to, especially this coming election, very, 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 very key. So the youth need to, one practical way they can do is to make sure that the voting system, whatever it is transparent, is accountable. They can do it in a very efficient way. They can do it in an efficient way. I don't know, there's a real life kind of like the youth can do all of them, say, okay, each whatever in this building, we have youths, we're standing here, forget the electric transmission, we are collating stuff, we got the numbers, and then we are collating it on our youth can develop software. That's another thing I was going to say. They can develop Listen, there used to be a time in OAU in the 80s, in the 70s, where youths in this country were very creative. That's what I'm talking about, our educational system. So they can develop a system that can, in real time, have something that you can say. We've seen where a crime has happened anywhere in the world, and someone has used a drone to capture, and the state's infrastructure can't even capture, and someone say, I've got it. And then, even where I come in more developed society where crime happens, this happened to me personally, where I've come out and someone has hit my car and I can't find who hit it, and someone has got door dash cam, and I've gone to them, they've given me, and that becomes evidence. So the youth can say, oh, electronic transmission, okay, fine, do whatever you want. Your mago, this is the number every time. Okay, we're showing you this now. This evidence you can catch it. So the youth can do a lot. They can really do a lot. They can still say, okay, I know in some states in Tanzania, Uganda, they shut down the internet so that people can do that. But the youths are the powerful. They know social media better than these people.
Exactly.
So they can have alternative ways of, creating a back channel or whatever it is you want to call it, to make sure that our vote will count. So they should start in that practical way. So, but until they take that step and secure their future, because it's their future, then nobody's going to do nothing for you.
That's right. I like the fact that you started with nobody's going to do nothing for you, and you're ending it on that note. Very interesting. I wish we could go forward and more on this, but we just have to call it a close here. Thank you so much, Dr. Michael, for joining us here in 360 Youth Dialogue.
Thank you very much, Juliet. It's
You're
a pleasure.
welcome. And to our wonderful viewers, peace building, it's not about taking guns and ending wars. It's about innovation. It's about intellectual. It's about education. So we've traced this down to our education system. Education is really powerful. To be educated is to have power, and to have power is to be on top. Thank you for joining us here on 360 Youth Dialogue. Same time, same station, only on Third Eye Africa Television.